Hello, this is Dr. Darnise coming at you again. Well, I'm coming to you on an evening where I am giving some thought and reflection to a number of things. Often, during the course of a day, I will encounter a lot of different people, as I'm sure you do too. And when they find out that I am a religion scholar, people have all kind of questions. And maybe you do too. And so, to the extent that I often ask people, my friends, when you're introducing me to one of your friends at a dinner or something, don't introduce me by saying that I'm a religion professor or religion scholar, because the whole night people are going to be talking to me about religion. And, really, I love that. Religion and spirituality is my thing. But if I'm out on a social occasion, I like to relax and enjoy like everybody else. So, maybe you can relate if you're a lawyer or a doctor or an investment banker or something, and people want to ask you all of their questions when they get a chance to meet you. But anyway, so this evening I'm just reflecting on some things that have been going on, kind of questions that people ask me repeatedly. And so I thought, well, why don't I do a series in my videos, Dr. Darnise's School of Spirituality, and I'm going to be addressing various religion questions that I get. And, if you have some questions that you'd like me to address, feel free to write them below or contact me via email, and I will answer them. Well, let's see. So this particular question, it's kind of my question, but it comes out of a certain context that other people raise with me. People are very curious about early Christianity, and I guess I should say Christians are curious because they've heard all kind of things like, the Bible's been tampered with, books were taken out, is this true? Is so-and-so religion a cult? What is Gnosticism? I keep hearing about this as a Gnostic group or whatever. So sometimes, I'll just throw a question back at people. And I guess this came from a question where someone said something about Judas. Now, you're Christian. Probably you know the story, the Christian story, and that Judas in the Bible is the one who betrays Jesus, or sort of sets the scenario whereby Jesus ends up crucified. And so I raise the question for you, for anybody listening and watching right now: is Judas the traitor, the betrayer, or is he really the misunderstood hero of the Christian story? Now, I realize that this is a controversial point that I'm raising, and that's good because we can have some conversation. But what I mean is, in the Christian narrative, it is important, crucial really, that Jesus is crucified, because God has set it up such that Jesus' crucifixion and resurrection offers salvation to all of humanity. And so the crucifixion really is necessary. Jesus himself says in the garden, let this cup pass from my lips if it be thy will. But it does not pass from his lips, so Jesus himself understands that he must go through this. Now, we could say, well, what did really Jesus understand was going to happen? We don't really know that. We have what the New Testament tells us, and the Gospel of John in particular says, well, he knew what this was all along. So, okay. However, the Christian narrative, Christian theology, requires that Jesus be crucified for the salvation of humanity. Now, that being the case, Judas is really fulfilling a role that is necessary. Am I right? And so we think of him as this great betrayer and, selling him out for 30 pieces of silver, and that being a really horrible thing. But in the tradition, somebody had to do it. And isn't this part of God's plan? And therefore, isn't Judas doing something that God requires? God needs us to get done. Somebody has got to lead to Jesus' execution. So even the Romans who put him to death, they're part of the scenario. And so, anyway, I ask that because, well, as I said, people ask me a lot of questions. Sometimes in the course of that conversation, I ask them some questions and get the conversation going again. But really, think about that. In the Christian narrative, it is necessary that Jesus die. So this person who is responsible for turning him in, so to speak, well, not so to speak, literally turning him in, has in tradition been treated as someone who's, the worst betrayer on planet Earth. I mean, we even use that term to refer to people who betray someone, a Judas, we call them. So, in addition to that question, I want to talk to you about a book that maybe you've heard of or not. And it is called, let's see if I can get this in here. Oh, The Gospel of Judas. You may not have heard of it, or maybe you have. The Gospel of Judas. I don't think you can see it quite clearly here, but up here it says the Gospel of Judas. And this refers to a papyrus, an ancient writing that was discovered, and it is the Gospel according to Judas Iscariot. Now, if you are familiar with the Bible, you know that there's a Gospel according to Mark, a Gospel according to Matthew, according to Luke, and according to John. And we think of those as being written by those particular people, even though in scholarship we don't know who those people really were. We know that a gospel was written in their name. But we think of those as good representative stories of Jesus' life. Well, there are other gospels. And this Gospel of Judas is one such book or writing, I'll say, that recasts what we know about that scenario of Jesus and Judas, or Jesus and his disciples, in a very different light. Here, Jesus is actually asking Judas to be the one to turn him in. And it is because Jesus recognizes what must be done. And so he himself is asking Judas, who he considers in this telling of the story to be his greatest ally, his closest friend, the closest of his disciples. Who else but my closest friend can I even trust with this assignment? And he says, Judas, I know this is going to be difficult for you, but you must do it for me. Now, I know a lot of you will say, what is this book? Okay, this writing, discovered by scholars, and the way writings often come to light in Egypt, for example, the Dead Sea Scrolls, if you're familiar with those, are found in caves or found through archaeological research. So this writing too was found, and it has been dated to approximately the 2nd century of the Christian era. And so this book is really about, what can we say? Not so much about, is it really, accurate representation of what Jesus actually said to Judas, but how could it be that such a book could even be written? What person or community of people wrote this particular telling of this story? And that's what the scholars in this particular book are concerned with doing, given that by the 2nd century, the Christian story was already being formulated. And so this, even in its own time, would have been quite controversial. Now, this is written, well, actually it's edited because it's an ancient text. It's written by this community of people. We don't even know a particular name, but hey, Judas, we can go by that. So this book is edited by some well-known Bible scholars. Rudolf Kasser, Marvin Meyer, and Gregor Wurst, who are well-known Bible scholars. And I just bring that to your attention in case you're wondering, where can I get this book? What is this book about? I just want to give you that information. But there is, or was, a community that saw the story of Jesus and his crucifixion differently than what we have in mainstream Christianity. And it was not the first one. It's not the only one. There were many, many, many different writings during the time of what we call now ancient Christianity or early Christianity. So the mere existence of the writing isn't what's surprising, but what it is or what it tries to say about Jesus is obviously quite different. So I am going to throw the question to you, if you're watching or listening. Is Judas necessary for God's plan for human salvation? If Judas is a necessary part of God's plan for human salvation, does this make him actually a hero? A misunderstood hero? Or does he remain a villain? Which is it really going to be? Most Christians, I think, well, most of us in general, but particularly Christians, have come to think of him as the ultimate betrayer. But whoever it ended up being, it was in God's plan, so Christianity would say, that Jesus was going to die and be resurrected for the salvation of humanity. How was that going to happen? It was going to take some human agency to get that done. And a person who's able to walk that path, such as Judas did, do we misunderstand Judas and his role? So, that's my question for you. You may have some questions for me. As I said, I'm going to be doing several of these Dr. Darnise's School of Spirituality based upon the questions that I get frequently when I'm out, wherever, the hair salon, grocery store, restaurant, wherever. And, I don't really mind. Sometimes I do, I guess, sometimes, if I'm under the dryer of the hair salon. But, it's a topic that's obviously near and dear to my heart, and I don't mind answering. So I'm so interested to hear what you think, not only about this particular question, but what other questions you may have that you would like to see me address. So on that note, I will leave you, and I'll be back with some other questions. Take care.